Welcome back to Echo Ridge, and another update here on our Chaos Crew Play Along, aka the Dumpster Fire. We are currently sitting at cycle 3321, and there are quite a few updates we need to do in and around the colony, which of course I'm then going to turn around and make a video of. The first thing we have to do, due to the February Quality of Life update, is fix all of our ranches. These old critter drop-offs, as you may have already heard, will no longer work. You can see in the tooltip it says building deprecated. So we have to deconstruct it and replace it with, yes, a critter drop-off. It's just a different critter drop-off, but now we have a critter pickup as well. Critter drop-off goes in, doesn't need to be made out of steel, that's for sure. Once the new critter drop-off is in, I decided to set it at 6 out of 6 critters, even though there is only enough room in here for 5 critters, with a 60 tile total stable, in each pip requiring 12 tiles. That means we should have a max of 5. But if we look at them, you can see their mood is still happy, even though they're crowded. Well, if you go down to the happiness tooltip, under their condition, you can see they're getting the +5 for grooming, +1 being cozy, which means they've used the critter condo, and it counteracts the -1 from being crowded. I've been playing around with it for a little bit because there is a moment in time before a critter goes and uses the critter condo where their reproduction is going to drop back down to the 2%. So it might be something you want to keep an eye on. Next up, let's fix our plug slugs. And I do mean fixed, because if you're running a colony with one of these old buildings, the dupes will not drop off any critters to it. Plug slugs, plug sluglets, and max critter count of 8. Again, we could go a little bit higher because of the critter condo. And now on to our Drecos. Drecklets and Drecos with a critter count of 8. And I think that's it. Oh, no, we have our poke shells. Decent job of utilizing a bunch of different critters in this colony. I can tell you where I didn't do a good job though. I remember moving this wall over to add another water sieve, but I completely did not change the amount of critters that were allowed in the drop-off. And as such, they've also been crowded, except they don't have a critter condo, and thus their reproduction is severely nerfed. Last up would be the Pacu. Unfortunately, as reported to me by some of our community members, it looks like the fish release is broken. And so far I can concur with them because it says the container is storing 0 critters of a maximum of 5. There are no errands to drop any off, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on the Pacu Ranch. I don't want them to go to extinct as well, like our poor hatches did. Don't worry, one day we'll get another hatch out of the pod, and we'll repopulate them. But I do need to update their critter drop-off, and this is going to be a good opportunity to see if I can copy and paste the settings from this critter drop-off. Not that it's completely useful in the long term, but it may help somebody out. You cannot paste from one building to the other. Good to know. The next big change that came to us from the February Quality of Life update was the gas reservoir size. And we're running a lot of gas reservoirs for a multitude of purposes, which means we're going to have to change some things up. Starting off with, I think I'm going to disconnect it right here. Being that we were only able to store 150 and now we can store 1,000, we need to make some changes. By the way, I did not come in here and deconstruct the old gas reservoirs. Those are automatically changed over. So I think I'll keep these bottom 4 and then just get rid of these top 3, which will give us even more space for activities. We also have one here that holds hydrogen. I don't see a reason to change it. And then finally we have one down here that holds chlorine. And all this is going to do is make this whole system better by giving me the ability to store a lot more chlorine in between dormancy cycles of the chlorine gas vents. I don't know what we necessarily need to put down here, but let me know if you have any suggestions in the comments below. By the way, I've had to start running these natural gas geysers by using a timer. They now run for 50 seconds in every cycle. And the reason why I did that is because we need the polluted water. We weren't making enough polluted water to even feed our fertilizer synthesizer, which of course is draining our fertilizer supplies, so we haven't been able to use the farm stations. I'm trying to remember some of the other updates I've done in the past, 800 cycles? I can tell you we added 4 more sweepy docks because, the only thing better than 8 sweepies is 12 sweepies, but also because regolith would land here, and it was the furthest point away from both sides, we were getting a little backlog of regolith because it wasn't being picked up as much. These extra 4 sweepies have solved that problem pretty quick. We've also made some headway with our geothermal power. As you can see, we have a little bit of magma left to go before we can start cutting through this. We're still drawing in quite a bit of heat, with the steam turbines both generating 730 watts. This is not because we need it, as you can see the smart battery is chock full, but rather because I put the turbines on a signal switch to guarantee that they'll run to keep draining more and more heat from this biome. Now it's going to take a long time, but I'm not trying to go down there with 1300 degree igneous rock. No. I'm going to wait until all this igneous rock is down to about 400 degrees. You can see closer to our geothermal spike, it's down to about 255. If I would have been forward thinking and built a maintenance access point when we designed the system, we could extend the geothermal spike, which would no doubt help not only draw out the rest of this magma, but also take in a lot of this excess heat from the igneous rock. I may end up doing that anyways by building a second entrance somewhere in this area, but I'm not 100% sure yet. Quick update for you on the Pacu and more research in how the fish release is broken. It looks like the only part that's broken is its ability to count how many critters are in the room. The reason being is dupes are still grabbing the new Pacu and dropping it off, as evidenced by the fact that I have 7 critters inside the room, which is gonna pose a problem eventually. Right now, they're crowded, which, as you know, since they have their wonderful little water fort, is keeping their reproduction high. Eventually, there's gonna be too many fish, and they will lose more happiness. And when that happens, they're gonna stop reproducing, at least at their standard rate. The problem for me, though, is they're gonna be chewing through my seed supply. I keep an eye on how many kilos worth of seeds are in this storage bin. It's the primary reason why I'm running bomb lilies on this planetoid. Same goes for the dust caps. If I'm not producing enough seeds, I'm not going to be able to feed the Pacu, and then they will starve. One great thing about the update is the devs have fixed the bug where the dehydrated packs were not being counted correctly. We are up to 12,311 packs of dried surf and turf. I don't need that many units of surf and turf. Unfortunately, it looks like the dupes are still preferring lower quality meals though. As you can see, they ate the fried mushrooms, instead of going over here to the rehydrator and grabbing some surf and turf. Now, this could be by design, with the devs thinking being, well, the duplicants are going to eat all the fresh food before they resort to the dehydrated food, and that sort of makes sense. Except in this case, remember, I'm only growing those mushrooms to feed the Pacu. Now, alternatively, I can just turn the fried mushrooms off, and the duplicants will then start rehydrating some of their surf and turf and eating it. But what's going to happen now is all that fried mushroom is going to end up rotting, which wouldn't be so bad because, well, we feed all the rot piles and the polluted dirt to the poke shells, and sometimes they don't get enough food, as evident by this very unhappy poke shell who is starving. But I've been harvesting all the mealwood and letting it straight up rot to feed to the poke shells. That, combined with the polluted dirt coming from the water sieves, both from our bathroom system and the water sieve cleaning all the polluted water coming from the other planetoid and our overflow, it's typically been enough. So with all that being said, I think it's high in time that we create a deep freezer. I know it took us a little bit of time to get around to it, 3,300 plus cycles, but we're getting to it now. The question is, where do I want to put the thermal aqua tuner or the thermal regulator? I've always used hydrogen in a thermal regulator, but this time, I think I'm going to try liquid naphtha out. I have plenty of power, so I don't mind using the thermal aqua tuner instead of the regulator. And to be frank, I like trying new things. What I'd really like to do is put another thermal aqua tuner in here. This would save us so much work in having to build another steam turbine and thermal aqua tuner setup. And as evidenced by the fact that these steam turbines have only been running for 17% in the last 5 cycles means I have some thermal headroom available. So without further ado, let's start making a mess. Step 1, I need to put a heavy watt conductive plate right here, and that way I can put a bottle emptier. Ooh, wait a minute, I don't need to do that. Do I have any little tiny bottles of naphtha? Perhaps by mopping that up. Perfect. This is 50 kilos, that's 90. 50 is probably going to be too much anyways. But now I can just move this bottle up to this point using the move to command. And then we'll just click empty on the bottle. J-Ray, no. Thank you, Naz. and we'll be left with the maximum amount that its viscosity will allow. I will have to pick up a little bit of mess over here. And what are we doing, dupes? All this time we've been AFK. You're just dropping stuff everywhere? And then I can deconstruct this tile, and I'm going to deconstruct this tile and hope that I don't inadvertently create a bead pump, because then that'll let all the steam come out. Perfect. What a great liquid lock. Now I know what you're thinking. The dupes aren't in suits. You're going to realize this is only 45 kilos worth of steam pressure. So yes, they're going to get scalded a little, but they're actually going to care more about their popped eardrums. Plus, all of these dupes are very well trained. I mean, look at all these available skill points. So they're going to be able to build this whole system pretty quickly, getting in and out of the 186 degree temps without too much damage. And this time I remembered we do have a nice little trauma center, so it's going to be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause it while I build this out. And that way we have the entirety of the build sitting there waiting for the dupes. I'm going to need to add a bridge here. Let me unpause for a second to see which direction it's going. Pause it. Oh, that looks like it's going to be painful, lupine. Then we're going to bring the coolant in through here. Go over. I actually want to move the bridge over. We'll do something like this. Standard pipe setup, and then we'll come back out through here. Now I am going to need another power line, which we have power transformers all over this colony, so one more doesn't really hurt. We'll grab some of our 403 tons worth of gold. We'll come up and over. I will bridge it, and then I'll separate this line right here, and this will be the line that powers this aqua tuner. All right, everybody have your instructions? Let's see how this goes. There's those popped eardrums. No big deal. So far, Lupine's only been stung once. There's twice. Oh, look at the whole team getting involved. Unfortunately, Lupine does not seem to be the quickest of builders, so they're going to have to take a break. So I'll take this opportunity and send them to the triage cot. J-Ray's up next, and I might as well make a couple more triage cots because we've just got our first incapacitation in Naz. Why is it always Naz? And it looks like Queen has just finished up the last element. Just to double check so I can seal this up. We can load the loop from outside. We have power. We have automation. I'll set the automation temporarily to above 5,000 so it doesn't turn on. And the last thing we have to do is close this whole thing back up. Win-win! Isn't that right, team? And for once, I didn't get the little naphtha of shame. Sometimes when I build these up, the liquid ends up dropping into here, which is none of the buenos. Man, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe I should have added a third aqua tuner just in case. Well, if we ever need to get back in there. Now the question remains of where we're going to put the deep freezer. Typically, we'd say in this spot right here, except it's not conveniently located next to the electric grill or the gas range or any of this. So what I think we're going to have to do is push all of this over, push the grill and this refrigerator over, and then put the deep freezer somewhere in here. Hopefully the duplicants won't mind us taking up a little space out of their soda machine room. Temporarily, I'm going to move everything that was here right up on top of this ledge. And then I'm just going to deconstruct these tiles and smush everything over. This may not have been my best idea. Because the mushrooms are sort of separated by how steel they are, each stack has to be moved independently. And I just realized there's no hotkey for move to. I was thinking about setting one up, but I would have chose M for move to, but that's already mop. Let me know in the comments below if you have a better hotkey for move to, remembering that M is mop and T is attack. Now in moving all these eggs, I'm definitely not going to move them all individually. I'm going to set up an automatic dispenser that has sweep only and critter eggs on it and do that in one fell swoop. I've already moved the conveyor chute over, and look, even the dupes don't have to do it. The auto sweeper is going to take care of it all. And it looks like we are still getting the unpermitted food weirdness when the dupes are relying on the rehydrators alone, even though I did put 2 rehydrators. My first thought was a dupe is hungry and both rehydrators were in the use, but that's not the case. I haven't seen anyone starve yet, but I also don't think this unpermitted food is supposed to pop up. So I'm thinking the devs have just a little bit more tweaking to do when it comes to the dehydrator and rehydrator. Now in our old system, we had this refrigerator that would store all the barbecue until we had more seafood. And then once we had a piece of seafood to go with the barbecue, it would be cooked in the gas range into surf and turf. Well, especially right now, with the Pacu situation so weird, it'll be nice to be able to temporarily deep freeze this barbecue while we wait. Now, while I did take away from their recreation room, we're going to give them more space, don't worry, because I'm going to have to take up probably about this much for the deep freezer. We will start by insulating the tiles around. Now, normally on these deep freezers, I end up putting chlorine in here. In this case, we have plenty of carbon dioxide stacked up, so I'm going to try to use it. We're, of course, going to need some drywall for our deep freezer. Then we'll add our conveyor chute. I'm going to use a bridge for this one here. And then I'll add a couple of extra rails just in case we ever need to come in and out in a different direction. And then I'm going to go straight up and through. I just realized I have to bump this whole thing up because one important part of the deep freezer is I like to have it on a metal tile. And the metal tile goes here. Everything else goes right here. Because I can't really drop it here because then the duplicants will not be able to get into their recreation room and enjoy their yummy soda. So I'm going to move this entire rail down here so I don't even have to deal with it in regards to our deep freezer. Of course. Is the only thing this bringing is meat? Let me follow this back. If it's only bringing meat, it can go directly into the deep freezer. Okay, it's bringing meat and eggshells. So if I just unselect eggshells and have the duplicants come up here to get the eggshells each time, I can then just hook right in. Perfect. I'll put the conveyor chute right there, deconstruct this, make sure we add some extra pipes just in case, add in our wonderful aluminum tile, and now we're finally ready for radiant liquid pipes. This is another reason why I wanted the metal tile, is because I want to go through not only the tile the food is sitting in, but also the metal tile the food is sitting on. So now we just got to bring these lines up. And this looks perfect right there. This aqua tuner is going to have to run so little. It's going to be phenomenal. And there we go. We have 3 kilos worth of carbon dioxide in that tile. Now I just need to load this loop up with some naphtha. I love having so much available dupe labor. Look at all of them. They're just waiting around. Some of them even said they wanted to go back into the sauna. Grab some liquid naphtha. We'll have to enable auto bottle. Plug the pump in. Now, because we're using liquid naphtha, we have to keep in mind it will turn into a solid at -50. We have plenty of headroom because our deep freezer only needs to be -18 or below. So I think we'll just set this at -20. So the maximum it'll be is -34. And even at -34, we don't have to worry about the carbon dioxide liquefying because it doesn't happen until -48. Also, now that I am not running those refrigerators, I have extra space. I can remove this tile and finally allow all this carbon dioxide to naturally drain. That loop looks filled enough, especially considering how little that loop's actually going to have to work. Now we can get rid of all this. And already our deep freezer is well below the -18. So now it's time to set up a little kitchen shipping, which whenever we're ready means I can start shipping the fried mushrooms over to the electric grill instead of having the dupes manually bring them. Not that it's a big deal, they don't do anything around here anymore anyways, but every little bit helps. Now the only difficult thing about setting up one of these systems is figuring out your positioning, otherwise you're going to end up in a loop. And the reason why I say that is, let's hypothetically say we want all of the fried mushrooms to come in here. We would just go to the conveyor loader and select fried mushrooms. Well, when we did that, this auto sweeper would pick up the fried mushrooms, put them in the conveyor loader, they'd be dropped down to this conveyor chute, and then guess what? This auto sweeper would pick them out of the deep freezer and put them back in the conveyor loader. We don't want that to happen. So what I end up normally doing is having 2 auto sweepers, one responsible for putting things into the conveyor loader and one responsible for taking things out. And this auto sweeper, for instance, wouldn't be able to load things into this conveyor loader. Now in this case, because I'm not trying to eat any of these fried mushrooms, I could just block the deep freezer from this auto sweeper being able to get into it. But that's not the way we like to do things around here. Let's set it up and practice the way we do it for real. And for that reason, I'm going to be flipping this upside down. Remember, the conveyor loader's tile of interest is this tile right here. So all I have to do is make sure this auto sweeper can't see that tile, which I believe if I put one block there, it won't be able to. And now the auto sweeper has no visibility of that specific tile. We can plug it in, and now all I need is one more auto sweeper, except this auto sweeper is not supposed to be able to see in the deep freezer. And this position right here is pretty good. Notice that it'll be within range of the electric grill and the oven once we scoot the oven over a little bit. And now on the conveyor loader, when I select fried mushrooms, this auto sweeper grabs them, loads them in the conveyor loader, well, after it picks up a whole lot of them, and drops them in here, where they're instantly deep frozen. And since they're deep frozen and in a sterile atmosphere, means they are never gonna rot. Next step is gonna be integrating our gas range. Remember, all the meat is gonna be brought either into the deep freezer or happen in our evolution chamber. So that meat will be brought to the electric grill, both times by this wonderful auto sweeper here. And then we'll have barbecue. So we also want barbecue going into this conveyor loader. We no longer need this refrigerator. We can deconstruct it, and now we can move the gas range over. Now, something to keep in mind with the gas range, it's 3 tiles high, which we'd normally like to put nice little lamps above it so the duplicates get the well lit buff, but you're gonna need an auto sweeper somewhere that's gonna have access into the freezer and not have access to this conveyor loader. Same problem as before. So you can put it off to the side like this, and the duplicate will still get the well lit buff, or you can put a nice little lamp right here, but because I like samesies, and we have a polka dot ceiling light here, we're just gonna keep this one here off-centered. I know, my eyes are burning too, but as bad as that looks, it's better than a random lamp sitting there. And more importantly, now we have enough room to put an auto sweeper here that has access to the deep freezer, but no access to the conveyor loader. Now it'd be nice when the surf and turf came out of the gas range that we could instantly load it into the dehydrators, and I think we can. And yes, I know we don't necessarily have to dehydrate our surf and turf anymore. We could just deep freeze it, but I still want to play around with the buildings and see what kind of tweaks that Klei makes in the future. I may end up switching that up sometime during the course of this playthrough, but for now, we're still going to continue to dehydrate all of our surf and turf. We can have this auto sweeper here load all the surf and turf into a refrigerator, and then this auto sweeper will be able to load it into this rehydrator, and this auto sweeper is going to be able to load it into this rehydrator. Now, you really don't even need the refrigerator. You could load them in directly as they come out of the gas range, but in this case, it allows for both auto sweepers to grab it out of here, and if it takes maybe a half a cycle, which these surf and turfs being dehydrated do, the fresh surf and turf will stay nice and fresh. Tell you what the problem is going to be is the duplicates stealing it out of the refrigerator. In fact, what we're going to do is really make them mad. I'm only going to allow 1 kilo worth of surf and turf to go into this refrigerator. The rest is going to be going into this conveyor loader to head down into the deep freezer. Then one of these auto sweepers takes some surf and turf and put it inside these dehydrators. This auto sweeper is going to grab 1 more surf and turf and put it in the refrigerator. And remember, duplicates can't get into the deep freezer. So let's test this whole system out by grabbing one of these elder Pacu, turning it into a Pacu fillet. That Pacu fillet ends up coming up here, being cooked into surf and turf, where it heads off into this fridge and then gets loaded into the dehydrator. Once the dehydrated packs come out, they get loaded into this conveyor loader and dropped off at this tile where I just remembered I'm not supposed to mouse over because everything sort of locks up. And I wanted to test that to find out what else is going on. It looks like old J-Ray is manually loading some stuff, and that's because they're so bored, but otherwise this auto super would grab it, put it back into the deep freezer until we were ready to load it up into this refrigerator. Well, I think that's a pretty handy kitchen. I'll keep an eye on it for the next 50 to 100 cycles, make sure I don't see any sort of flaws, but I think we're finally going to be able to see some of these calorie counts rise with the addition of the deep freezer. It's not going to be much, it's just going to be all that fried mushroom. I know a lot of you are looking forward to another episode in the farm series, but occasionally I have to do one of these updates, so I'm thinking maybe every other week or every 3 weeks for this colony, since it's such late game. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this deep freezer episode, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say in the comments below. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.